Orders, please. Order. Daily routine. Presenting and reading petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my capacity as the Attorney General and pursuant to Section 51 of the Judiciary Act, I hereby beg leave to table two separate revisions to the Civil Procedures Rules. The revisions were made in accordance with the Judiciary Act by the judges of Nova Scotia's Court of Appeal on January 21st, 2013.
The report is tabled. Statements by ministers. Government notices of motion. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North begs leave to introduce a bill. An Act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Bill number 40, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Education Act.
Order the bill be read a second time on a future day. Notices of motion. The Honourable Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I will move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Bernie O'Neill is retiring after more than 40 years in the credit union system. And whereas Mr. McNeil started as a teller in Sydney Mines in 1966 and rose to the ranks to become CEO of the Nova Scotia Central Credit Union. And whereas Mr. O'Neill was instrumental in creating the new Atlantic Central that brought credit unions from all 4 of the Atlantic provinces together. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House congratulate Mr. O'Neill on a successful career and send him our best wishes as he begins the next chapter in his successful life. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. The Honourable Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas former Truro Mayor and respected businessperson Doug Carter passed away on April 9th, and whereas Mayor Carter was first elected as a town councillor in 1968, became deputy mayor in 1969, and served as mayor from 1979 to 1997. Whereas in addition to his public service, Mayor Carter is remembered as an avid sailor and an award-winning curler, who is also the recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House remember the life and many accomplishments of Doug Carter of Truro and send sincere condolences to his family and friends. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour say aye. All those against say nay. Motion is carried. Orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that you now rise and the House resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole House on Supply.
Carried. We will now take a short recess for the government minister to set up in the chamber.
Order, please. The Committee of the Whole House on Supply will come to order. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the gallery looks like days gone by in Windsor when a large crowd would come out and see a famous young hockey player. It's good to say we have his brother here today. Madam Speaker, Madam Chair, could you please call estimates for the Minister of ERDT? And we'd like, I got the numbers here somewhere, Madam Speaker, for E4, E26, E42, and E49.
Thank you. Now call estimates, supply debate on E4, E26, E42, and E49. Now recognize the Honourable Member for Cape Breton North with 21 minutes remaining in the time allotted for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Minister, in the budget speech, the Jobs Here program is said to help small businesses get started, and they're going to introduce a single window, streamline access to current small business programs, ensuring the business owners can easily find and connect with the help they need to grow, hire, and succeed. Can I ask when that is going to take place, and if it's going to take an implementation period, and how long is that going to take?
9:13. The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the member is that we've already streamlined the web portal. Is that what we've done is we've got 5 buckets there, and we found that in the past, when clients or potential clients were looking for information about the programs that were available, is that they had to do a lot of searching and to find actually where it was or what it was that they were seeking. So what we've done is we now have 5 buckets. That's already happened. All the programs that we've had previously still exist. I will add that when it comes to moving ERDT forward and being, I'll use the word or the term, more friendly, more user-friendly, that's a process that will be ongoing. We will always be looking for ways that we can improve upon, enhance what we've got, so that the general population and business population can take full advantage of all the goods and services that we provide.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Also in the budget highlight speech, they're talking about decreasing the small business tax to 3% from 3.5%, and lowering the threshold from $350,000 per business. And it says in there the combined impact of these reductions, 93% of the small businesses are going to save money. The other 7% that aren't included there that are going to be making more than that threshold, what does that mean for them?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try my best to answer the question, which is truly a finance question, and the Minister of Finance would be in a better position to answer that question than I. When we reduce the small business tax for companies, our goal as a government is to encourage as many small businesses as we possibly can to take full advantage of that, be involved in the province of Nova Scotia, and certainly what we have at ERDT for the percentage, the small percentage that that do not qualify or cannot take advantage of the small business tax reduction, we have an enormous cluster of other programs and initiatives that would be available to them. And one of the things that we've done and we'd like to do at ERDT, we want to ensure that all of the diverse companies that we have in Nova Scotia and the small, medium-sized companies, businesses, that they can avail themselves to all the services that we do provide. And we've put a real emphasis this year on small business, and I think that the proof would be in the PIP initiative, the Productivity Innovative Program. We recognize that small businesses are a vital part of the Nova Scotia economy, and we're very much committed to assisting them to grow and be sustainable.
The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we're really truly trying to take full advantage of that, would it not have been better to decrease the tax rate and either maintain the threshold or increase the threshold instead of lowering it?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, the tax, the small business tax credit is truly comes under the mandate of the Minister of Finance. That our role when it comes to small businesses is making sure we create the right environment in Nova Scotia for small business to prosper here in the province, and certainly small businesses, those companies with more than 100 employees, we know that they make up 98% of business here in Nova Scotia. So we see them as being very vital to our economy, and that's why we have clusters of initiatives that will be of assistance to them. Even when one of the things when we talked about the web portals, we even provide so that when somebody connects, if they want to talk to a voice, to a person, we certainly make that happen, because it's very, very important for economic and rural development and tourism to have that direct contact. And I won't say we do hand-holding, but certainly what we will do is we will walk alongside any entrepreneur, especially those that are small to medium-sized businesses. They when they reach out to us and we reach out to them, and when we do make that connection, because we want to ensure that small businesses thrive and survive in Nova Scotia.
The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
So we're hearing from some of the small businesses, especially in my area, that lowering the threshold is probably going to negate the 3%, the half percentage point reduction. So if we hear enough through us and through you, would you bring that back to the finance minister and possibly look at reversing the decrease in that threshold?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to that question, I will say that within our government, that we are always continuously communicating with one another. That this government has been built on a foundation of working collaboratively with all the various departments. Small business We are very opening, small business, medium-sized business, large business. We pride ourselves on being very open and being very receptive around sitting down, talking to, and discussing. We have some programs that are 100% accessed by small and medium-sized businesses. And one of them is the credit loan program, which is one of the initiatives that we run through the credit union, which is 100% for small business. And if I may, we also have the Nova Scotia. There's so many of them, but I'll just read off a couple. The Nova Scotia Business Development Program is another program that's 100% accessed by small business. We got the Credit Union High Risk Commercially Viable Lending Program, 100% accessed by small business. I mentioned in a previous answer this morning the Productivity and Innovation Voucher program, we refer to the PIVP, which is again 100% access by SMEs. There's the Community Economic Development Investment Funds, which is more commonly known as CEDIFs, 100% access by small business. The Immigrant Small Business Lending Program, another one that's 100% accessed by small business. And the Small Business Growth, which is again 100. So we have, for anyone that potentially could fall through the cracks, we have other initiatives that could provide that sort of, if you will, safety net, that other programs that they can access and make use of.
The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
We'll change gears a little bit, Mr. Minister. We're hearing a lot about payroll rebates the last little while, about different loans giving to different companies. I guess my question is, of the payroll rebates that have been issued that have reached the end of their term, how many or what percentage of the companies achieve the maximum full-time equivalence?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good question. We don't have, certainly not at our fingertips, and I know NSBI is in the gallery. Our payroll rebates are administered through NSBI. I certainly don't have at my fingertips, nor does the deputy or our financial. We don't have that sort of data. I will request that NSBI, if they have that data, if they could make it available, they will. Payroll rebates, as the member I'm sure knows, are only paid in arrears. So our payroll rebates, we never lose money on our payroll rebates, despite what some individuals may think, and I'm thinking more probably in the public domain, but because they're paid in arrears. In other words, in order to get the payroll rebate, the recipient of the rebate has to reach, and I'm going to use the word, has to reach targets or milestones. And I know the member from Glace Bay will get a kick out of it every time he hears the word targets. But that's the way the payroll rebates work. They're always paid in arrears, never in advance of.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you're getting NSBI to get those numbers for me, I wonder if I could ask what percentage of jobs are actually created versus those that may be announced when the deal is actually signed.
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you to the member from Cape Breton North, is we would be pleased to part of the request this morning to NSBI would be to give us some more documentation with respect to the question. I have to say, and since payroll rebates has hit the floor, is that payroll rebates are a very vital tool for us to offer that incentive for potential businesses to come here to the province of Nova Scotia. And in many cases, payroll rebates have been the, if I can use the term, has been the product of sealing the deal. They have been very, very helpful. We can't offer some of the incentives that other jurisdictions offer when it comes to certainly there are jurisdictions around the world that have built facilities to try to entice businesses to their jurisdiction. And we don't have those kind of pockets, but certainly the payroll rebates work very, very well for us. And we did an analysis recently about the payroll rebates, and we found it to be a valuable tool. And we did analysis of payroll rebates by a third party. And I think if the member recalls, I was the one that requested that analysis because as minister responsible, I have an obligation to taxpayers and to companies to make sure that we are spending our money wisely and that we are getting our money's worth from payroll rebates.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North.
Keeping with the NSBI, new and retained payroll was actually 92 million versus a target of 130 million. Is there any reason why this target hasn't been met?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that NSBI does, and I might have mentioned this yesterday, is they are prospectors. They are always out there prospecting for new business, potential business, regardless of where they are, to either start up, come to Nova Scotia, to employ more Nova Scotians. So I will say this when it comes to payroll rebates, and I mentioned in my previous response to a question that we did a third-party evaluation of payroll rebates. Garner Penfold Consultants were the third-party evaluator. They looked at NSBI actuals when it comes to payroll results achieved during the period of 2007 to 2012, and it indicated that $1.2 billion of direct payroll was achieved. So part of the member's question is I know NSBI is already busily collecting more information for the member opposite.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton North with 2 minutes remaining.
That information that I had on that came from the NSBI's 2012-13 annual report from their corporate scorecard summary. Also, on that course, scorecard summary. The average gross salary a new job created was targeted to be $45,000 per person. Yet the actual result was only $38,000. If they're supposed to be creating high-value jobs, why aren't these targets being met?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have something here in my hand that, with respect to NSBI, with respect to payroll rebates, and it goes back again to that commissioned request that came from me directly about payroll rebates. And the results of the Nova Scotia Department of Finance's input-output model, and again, the Minister of Finance certainly knows more about this than what this member does, and it has been utilized to analyze the economic impact analysis over the past 5 years. And it did demonstrate a positive impact was felt right across the entire province. 47% of the employment was created outside of HRM. 37% of payroll was created outside of HRM. Over the past 5 years, for every dollar invested by the province of Nova Scotia through NSBI, the return on investment, or what in finance they refer to the ROI, for the province and the taxpayer was $1.43 in provincial tax revenues, or 43%. We do have some information about payroll rebates, and they've been proven and determined very effective way for Nova Scotia to grow its economy, and part of that economy is attracting new business, keeping existing businesses here, and assisting businesses to grow that are here in Nova Scotia, and the bottom line is hiring more Nova Scotians.
Time allotted for the Progressive Conservative Party has elapsed. I will now recognize the honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with, I'm going to get to some line-by-line items and just ask some specific questions on the budgetary lines. But I do want to ask the Minister a question first on a file and a program that's of great importance for all of the members of this House, certainly, and across the province. It's something that, particularly if you live in a rural economy that's sort of sensitive to changes and alterations in whether it be public spending or obviously the growth of the private sector of the economy, you feel those little effects. And one of the things we've felt, certainly in Glace Bay, and I think a lot of the members will attest, is some of the changes that have taken place with respect to student employment programs. And I know that there's a couple streams under the departmental budget and the ERDT, strategic cooperative education incentives, student careers development program, and of course the graduate co-op. So just to start off in terms of the financial implications of those programs, can the Minister tell us what the allotment for that was in the 2012-13 fiscal year versus what it looks like for the upcoming fiscal?
Question, member.
The Honourable Minister of Economic, Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The line item for estimates in last year's, it's unchanged. The number is the same, so it's unchanged. We've recognized the importance of us maintaining as a government those initiatives directed towards student employment. And I think it becomes pretty evident. And I know there's probably not a member of the House that when it comes to the spring and it comes to allocation of funds under the various initiatives we have under the student employment programs, there's probably not an MLA in Nova Scotia that doesn't get a phone call from somebody inquiring about, well, if they're going to get the student this year, is it going to be the same number as last year, or, oh, I didn't get a student this year, could you run some sort of interference or make a phone call to the minister's office or to somebody, or come across the floor and talk to the minister that that we've been eliminated, or we didn't receive our funding, or we missed a deadline, or whatever the case may be. So I think the student employment initiatives that we offered to the province are vital. And again, it's about us changing or continuing to invest in our youth. And there have been times when we all know that student employment initiatives have led to full-time employment. So we've maintained it, and we are maintaining it this year at the same level of the previous year. So there will not be any reduction.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
With respect to those, can the minister shed some light on the regional breakdown, as in how those dollars from the province are allocated by region? Is it a regional priority? How are those funds dispersed throughout the province?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think one of the things that I would like to think I built a reputation on as a minister that probably is more evident within the various departments, and it's one of fairness. And what we fairness and diversity. So what we've have done over the last, certainly while I've been the minister, is that when it comes to the allocation of student employment, we try to be inclusive and be as fair as possible. I don't have the regional breakdowns, but that's something, again, that staff is here in the gallery, and they will make note, and we will get that regional breakdown to you as soon as reasonably possible. Now, depending on what time we finish today, so it may be today, and if it's not today, it'll be Monday. But I can say to the member opposite is that inclusion is a very, very large part of my makeup, and I ensure that every time staff come into my office or I go into their office, whether it be about a program or anything associated with ERDT, one of the first conversations that we do have is around one of inclusion, and make sure that it's a fair process, and that we've got fair distribution as well.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Just one final question on the student employment programs. Is there a relationship, a correlation between federal funding for that program? I know the resumes are rolling into my office now, and people get pretty eager to get out there and hit those potential profit, not-for-profits, or those businesses that have openings for summer employment. So I just want to ask the minister, is there any way, is this impacted in any way by federal funding? For example, if the funding decreases, is there a change in how the regional breakdown, those fundings are allocated? If there happened to be, which I know there won't be, but hypothetically, if there was an increase from the federal funds, does that change the landscape, or is the provincial program very specific with where the money goes, and the federal allotment is something that's unrelated?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We work very closely with the federal government. Our goal is to maximize the greatest benefit possible for Nova Scotians. I can assure the member from Glace Bay that we do that. We are continually at the table with the federal government when it comes to, in particular, reference to initiatives that are co-funded. Our goal as we go down any path that involves the federal government is that Nova Scotians don't lose out in any way, shape, or form. Oh, and while I do have the microphone, and I'll provide this, and I'll ask the page to photocopy this for the member opposite. Oh, got a copy right here. But what this is for the member, it's a regional breakdown of the Student Career Skills Development Program. So staff will be more than, the page will be more than happy to make sure you get a copy of that. And I'll ask her to give a copy to both members.
I would also ask the Honourable Minister to table that so that that is available to all members of the committee. I recognize the Honourable Member of Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister. And I'll get a chance to take a peek at that. And if there's anything before the hour, I'll certainly bring it to your attention. I want to jump back into some of the estimates, and I'm going to draw your attention to page 6.5. Just a very quick question under the productivity and innovation segment. Just something that jumped out at me, and I'm assuming there's a logical explanation for it, but I remember last year on some of our exchanges on estimates, some of the questions that I always concern with is the importance of sector development and how you identify your core competencies in terms of what sectors are available for Nova Scotians from a private sector and certainly from a public dollar perspective, where we support and where the help is needed most. Under the programs and services line there, right at the bottom, there's two lines: Office of the ED and Innovation and Learning Programs. The bottom line item, Innovation and Learning, that used to be in last year's budget was a group of, I think, very important headings. There was workforce initiatives, Nova Scotia, sector strategies and analysis, which we talked about at length last year, innovation and learning, innovation and business competitiveness, sector development, which was also a topic of extensive discussion during the estimates last year, and finally workforce initiatives and entrepreneurship. So it looks like all of those functions have been combined, and they fall under innovation and learning programs. So I just want to first verify if that's correct, and if so, what was the reason for the change to make that line item much more general than it had been?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to give the member from Glace Bay comfort is that it's basically the same programs. The programs are the same, and part of what we've talked about earlier was about how we have streamlined things at ERDT and how we are doing some more in the way of efficiency. So it's basically the same thing. It's we haven't eliminated or deleted.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that clarification. If I could draw your attention now to investment and trade, page 6.7. Just want to to start the conversation on this, obviously this is a very significant portion of the budget. There's the line items that sort of seem to be the same, similar thing, I guess, investment and of course the former IEF, the Nova Scotia Jobs Fund. So there's 17 million for investment and 29 under the NS Jobs Fund. Can the minister explain just a bit of a distinction, which one is which? We certainly we're familiar with the genesis of the Jobs Fund, so that line item is very clear. But what's the investment portion under that subgroup, and what sort of functions do they provide that are distinct from each other?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the member from Glace Bay, is that is mostly capital investments under PIP, and PIP is under this government. PIP is a relatively new initiative, a very successful initiative, I might add. But PIP provides that opportunity where we as a government, taxpayers, invest in businesses, they invest in employees, they invest in businesses so business can become more productive, more competitive, and compete globally. The capital investments are ways that companies have invested in their individual company technologies with assistance from the province of Nova Scotia. And in some cases, it's just a matter of companies becoming more modern and catching up, trying to stay current. We have in Nova Scotia many of the companies have been around for a number of years, and through various reasons of their own, they haven't been able to keep pace with modernization. So we've come in and we've offered some valuable assistance to them. We do investments through PIP, and I'm going to pick a number. I hope it's, and I know if it's not right, the deputy will correct me, but the number is about 10,000 workers, employees that have received training under the PIP initiative, not to mention the 400 companies that have taken advantage of PIP. So there's also the clean technology. So we pride ourselves on the PIP initiative. Also, that makes up part of that money, that line item, is Cape Breton Rail, the investments that taxpayers have made in Cape Breton Rail, and also part of that line item would be the aerospace and defense. And I'm sure, as the member opposite is aware, that aerospace, defense and security is certainly a large part of the Nova Scotia economy, the Atlantic Canada economy, and so it's a summary of PIP being the biggest part, but certainly Cape Breton Rail and aerospace, defense, and securities also is in that line item.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
For the investment line, there was 17.8, so say 18, and then the forecast is over budget by $1.5 million, and then the estimate for the coming fiscal is back to that original 17 point something. Was that a one-time investment? Was that something very specific? Can that cost overrun, the budgetary overrun, be linked specifically to a project or some kind of injection? Or because it seems like it hasn't been that inflation hasn't been accounted for this budgetary year. So is that one project, or is that just a sort of a global overrun?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
The member will be, I trust, will be happy, Mr. Chair, to hear that the reason for the difference is certainly the investment that government has made in Cape Breton Rail. You know, there would be some other one-time investments involved in there, but Cape Breton Rail is certainly the driver in this instance.
Member.
Where is that Cape Breton Rail agreement? Where are we in terms of the years? When was the? I think was it last year that that agreement was renewed, that subsidy, and if that's the case, then has it been budgeted for in this upcoming fiscal? Because again, if that was the blip in the budgetary radar, it looks as though you're back to the 2012-2013 estimate number, give or take. So, if that was that investment, what's the timeline? When will that investment be renewed? And has that been accounted for in the upcoming fiscal year?
Minister.
Welcome to the chair, Mr. Chair. Cape Breton Rail was a 3-year agreement that we signed with Cape Breton Rail. I wish I had the mind trap that I could quote these numbers right off the top of my head, but I'm glad to read them. It's a 3-year agreement. There was for 13-14. We've set aside $2,563,000.
Member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. I'm going to now drop to the next line, the NS Jobs Fund, and looking at that number, and we've talked at length about the collective value of that line item. I know last year this was really, if you look at the overall budget for ERDT, this was the line that was diminished greatly because of that the closure, the ending of the committed. 40 plus million for the forestry strategy. So can the minister explain how the budget deliberations led to this number? As in, how is it decided that 30 million, 29.5 million would be the number for the collective amount for the jobs fund for the 2013-2014 fiscal year?
The Honourable Minister for Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What that accounts for, certainly, and the member is accurate. The 44 plus that we invested in the forestry sector, but that also accounts for deals that are already done, that we've made a commitment to, but also it is a projection of deals that we are currently working on that may require, that may come to a conclusion during the fiscal year. So we've had, what we do is it is an estimate and it's an estimate that's based on projections. That's probably the best way I can explain it.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would the minister mind just explaining how these funds are allocated and what how they're accessed by the cabinet and by the government? As in, what's the decision making process? I know there's, if the minister can include a discussion about in the response. Some implications of what the advisory board for the Jobs Fund does. What's the relationship between the advisory board and cabinet? Basically, in a nutshell, Madam Chair, how these decisions come about.
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, good question, and one that I'm truly proud to respond to. The Jobs Fund is the first step in the process as it goes down that path. It's a four-step process. We have the Jobs Fund Board, so that would be the first check and balance would be the board. From the board, it then comes to my office, where I go over it, and if I sign off on it, from there it goes to the Economic Investment Council, where I, as the minister responsible, would present it along with, I'll use the term that I probably would use most common. I give the good, the bad, and the ugly at the investment committee. So that's step 3, and the fourth and final step would be when that transaction or that proposal goes to the executive council. And again, this is a process that has been implemented under our watch for the purpose of oversight. I've got to just add that all of these steps are important, and I don't think one overrides the other, but I will say that at the board level, the Jobs Fund board level, we have the Nova Scotia business minds that on that board, so I always consider their views and their opinions very valuable as far as the go forward is concerned. So I think the process we've set up takes care of oversight. I think this is, in my opinion, the right checks and balance put into place. And you know, I should also mention that even before something goes to the board, there's also in that package is the in-depth analysis that's done by staff. That staff certainly go over everything with a fine-tooth comb. So I guess we could say that's certainly probably another step in the process as well.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned, Minister, about staff. Is there specific staff assigned to the NS Jobs Fund, or is this just a budget allocation that follows the process as you've outlined? Is there specific individuals under ERDT or one of the development agencies that are specifically linked to the Jobs Fund?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, we do. There is a dedicated team, but also, even though there is a dedicated team, we at ERDT are very, very blessed that we've got a huge amount, there's an abundance of talent within ERDT, and what we do is also that we reach out, we search out if there's an area of expertise that somebody has within the department that may not be part of that team that has the direct liaison, then we do reach out, search out, and find that expertise within. So we have people dedicated in the investment and trade that's directly has responsibility to the board. But again, we don't confine ourselves just to those individuals, because we reach out within our department and look for the expertise.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you. Just with the on the advisory board piece, are there times when and sort of suggested that you don't follow that process? That step process, it doesn't always sort of come in line, and no one component of that is more important than the other. Are there times when the advisory board comes forth with a project and they're not approved, or is it this is something that they're kind of on the back end and they sort of do specific details and look at specific components of a deal? So I guess in a nutshell, do they come to the department with recommendations, and are those recommendations sometimes turned away, or do they serve on the back end to make sure that the fine details are looked after?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The advisory board, first and foremost, they're there to advise. That's what they do, and they do an excellent job at it. What the advisory board has done, they are at the front end of any one of our transactions. They are the I said previously, the first point of contact outside of staff. And I talk about how fortunate we have been, because there have been times when the advisory board has come to me with suggestions on ways that we can improve the deal. So is it carved in stone that I follow their advice? Well, no, it's not. They are strictly advisory, but I can say this with all sincerity, that they, if they have an idea that they come forward with, it's always been a good idea. So what they do in some cases make, if I can use the term package, they make the package that much stronger. They add strength to it.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you. Just looking at the final line under Program and Services for Investment and Trade, we have Major Investment and Project Office. The came over budget by 100%, and that sort of number, 736, went to 797. So it grew it's growing for this upcoming fiscal year. Can the minister break down what were the reasons for the cost overruns for that? First of all, an explanation and a breakdown of what that specific line item entails, and what sort of the budget implications are to go 100% over and then maintain that 797 for the 2013-14 fiscal year.
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We made, and I know that the member from Glace Bay, as all members of the House are aware of this, is that we made a significant, a major investment for the transition, the Bowater transition team, which accounts for a large part of that line item. But I will also say that for this is a line item that, as we move forward into the future, that this will be there will be some growth in this line item. We've got a department now that's solely fixed on major investments and projects in the department. So Bowater transition team is the biggest chunk of that money.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the Minister for that. I'm sure he'll be relieved to know I'm going to move away from the line items for the budget, and I'm going to ask a few questions about some of the files that we've spoken of many times here in the House, and certainly in our respective communities and in many different arenas. And the one that stands out, and I know the Minister and I have had a reviewed Hansard on this file, and I know the Minister and I have had a few exchanges on it, but it's of course the projects investment. And I just want to we'll get some information and share an exchange on this and clarify where I've been with this, because I've asked a lot of the questions that I've kind of led the way on some of the questioning. So I think I have a bit of a understanding for this file, and certainly I have my perspective on it. And a lot of what my information and what I've come to understand about the project stems from conversations and dialogue with the consultant engineering of Nova Scotia. As the Minister knows, 4,000 employees fall under CENS, and they add their estimates, and they say conservative estimates would be 120 to 150 jobs per year to the Nova Scotia economy, of course, and other than, I guess, indirectly through some contracts they may be awarded, they would receive government money that way, but in large respect, they've never received public funding for their operations or anything of that nature. And I just want to assure the firm and the Minister again that this has never been about projects. It's never been directed at them, and I would never, put responsibility at their private sector entity. Their job is to make money. They do have the Nova Scotia connection with their president, Mr. Richards. So there is rationale for them to be in Halifax and have people on the ground here. And again, the cost advantages that we offer to an industry like engineering is important. So this has never been about them, and I think that the Engineering Association, CENS, wanted to make that very clear, that this was never a question or an issue with projects. It was just about how the public dollars were released. And the reality is, if you look closely at the deal, there is two things. The payroll expectations, which is a very big hurdle for a firm like Projects. If you are employing the more senior engineers, obviously there's a pay scale and a level associated with that experience and with those years and with that knowledge. So they would have to hire a lot of senior engineers to hit that echelon for the payroll expectations. And of course, it's also a numbers game. And for that organization, Projects, to meet the payroll rebate agreement, they'll have to obviously meet a certain number of employees, and with the the nature of the consulting engineering business, with the nature of the Nova Scotia economy and the Canadian economy for that matter, that could prove to be, it's a peak and valley sector, and contracts come and they go, and big ones are here and then they're not. So I think that there's not even a guarantee that they will reach this. So again, this is not and has never been specifically about projects. And again, these questions are in earnest because I think it's important how we got to this investment. So with an industry that has been successful, they're growing jobs, they're certainly growing the economy, doing their part with 4,000 employees, with the knowledge that we have at our community colleges, with the tremendous work that's done with engineers at DAL, at CBU, and at other institutions across the province. I just want to understand, how was the decision made by NSPI to get into this? How was this industry identified, and what was the rationale for supporting the projects deal?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank the member opposite for that question. I also thank the member from Glace Bay, and I think what I heard was a recognition of the importance of those jobs coming from the west, coming east. Finally, we got somebody coming from the west to the east as opposed to reverse. The first, or maybe the second thing I want to say is that the Nova Scotia Association of Engineers, and I think it's very important for the member to know that I had at least two meetings with the association. I also know that through ERDT and through NSBI that there have been meetings, that they are working, there's collaboration as we all move forward for the betterment and for the good of Nova Scotia. So it's the members should know that the working relationship with the Nova Scotia engineers is on solid footing, and we are working together for the good of the whole. The projects coming to Nova Scotia, this is, as the member is aware, a payroll rebate incentive that we've granted to them, and as such, the province of Nova Scotia does not lose money. The payroll rebate is paid in arrears. Once the milestones are reached by projects, there will be a payroll rebate awarded to them over the next several years. Rebates never pay out more than what's earned. So I can, there's never been an example, even with respect to someone leaving the province after the payroll rebate has expired. And if there's been payouts, the records will show that we made more money. We've never, ever lost money. So the rebates have been a great. The president of projects, and I think the member identified about his Nova Scotia roots. There are also projects. When I sat down and was introduced to projects, they also alerted me and told me about the number of Nova Scotians that they have in their workforce, expats that work in Calgary that want to come home. And we're so eager and keen to have those expats return to their whole province and contribute to our economy here. The engineering in the world of engineering, we have hundreds of graduates every year in engineering. And what this now affords those hundreds of graduates, for some of them, it affords them an opportunity to stay here in Nova Scotia and earn a living for their families. And I can't emphasize enough not only about the working relationship that we've established with projects, but also the move forward relationship that we've established with the Nova Scotia Association of Engineers. You know, we would like to see more projects come to Nova Scotia. We'd like to see more projects that employ Nova Scotians that were born here and raised here and educated here that want to come home. And these are good paying jobs that are going to make a huge contribution to our economy. We also worked out with projects, just, you know, when we envision some of those hundreds of graduates from our engineering schools, that, you know, there will be added incentives for them to go to work for these companies that are coming to Nova Scotia, the recent graduates, the new resident incentives. So this is a good deal for Nova Scotians. This is a building on making a stronger relationship for Nova Scotia government, for taxpayers, between the Nova Scotia Association of Engineers. So I think this is a win-win-win for all concerned, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister. I guess, and again, I wouldn't disagree with basically anything that the Minister said in his reply. The challenge for me, and I'm sure that Mr. Lund can probably help out with this, sort of some of the background and some of the information that led to this deal. My question and my concern with respect to this, and the number of jobs and the industry and bringing people home, that again I agree wholeheartedly. But when you put, and I think the deal was $11 million, give or take, so $11 million. When you put, with all due respect, there would be a lot of companies in a lot of sectors that if you were able to provide that kind of money, albeit a payroll rebate, that's still a cost that goes into your operations that, of course, they have to hit the targets to get. I understand that totally. But I guess the larger concern that I have is with respect to how we identify what industries we are going to support and in what sectors we are going to support. The argument for me fundamentally has been that the engineering sector in Nova Scotia doesn't seem to need that kind of support with such an active, competitive sector and an active engineering environment now. It's tough to see. Now, there are many sectors, and NSBI and the Minister and the Deputy Minister and members of this House could identify several sectors that you could make injections to of a similar nature, albeit a payroll rebate or from the Jobs Fund or what have you. So I guess the question is, going backward, how did this decision come about via NSBI, and how did we identify the consulting engineering sector as one that would be viable for public dollar investment?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear the member, and trust me, I hear you very, very clearly. And fundamentally, I think we have, between you and I think we have a disagreement on philosophy. And it's not a big one. it's only a slight one, but I hope that I can shed some greater light where I know we're on the same page, but what I'd like to see is for you and I to be on the same line. And first of all, I want to make it very, very, very clear that when you talk about payroll rebates, and we'll use projects as the example, I want to emphasize this is not a cost to Nova Scotia. This is not costing Nova Scotians anything. So here we have an opportunity to bring a company 440 jobs, many of them ex-Nova Scotians, that get paid salaries are very good in the vicinity of $80,000 to $90,000 a year that could go. This is a company that's in Calgary, Alberta, that's going to be in Halifax, Nova Scotia, at no cost to taxpayers. And I want to really emphasize there's no cost to this. But how even when? So 440 jobs at $80,000 to $90,000 a year. And I, do the math on that, and I'm sure the member is better at math than I am. Do the math on that, and someone's just said that it's 18, and I've got to look, $18.2 million in direct taxes for the province of Nova Scotia. So that's not a cost. We make money. We, Nova Scotia, are making money. We compete for jobs. We compete for jobs with Alberta. Alberta's, I know. I've got a son in Calgary. He's been in Calgary now for a number of years. Would he love to come home? Absolutely. I mean, so I know what it's like to have family and friends living in another part of Canada and not in their home province. He's thinking about getting married. He's thinking about raising a family. He'd like to do it here in Nova Scotia. And he says, well, Dad, it's very, very simple. I'd like to be back home where all the supports are. And I know what that means. Well, I've got a built-in babysitter and Dad and Mom. And you know what? But I love that thought. I love that. I would love nothing more. I see some of my colleagues here in the House getting up on their feet and being acknowledged for having grandchildren. And I envy them. I envy them even more when they have grandchildren that are in their backyard. And I would love nothing more for my son to be home with his partner and to be raising a family here and be close to the family home. So that Jane or Johnny or Percy Jr. could be at just an arm's length away from me. It would be fantastic. We have an opportunity with projects for finally an opportunity for 440 people from the west to come to the east instead of the opposite direction at no cost to Nova Scotians. This is what we get, that $18.2 million in direct tax without projects, without those sort of projections. That's $18.2 million, another way to look at it, that we wouldn't have. So this is a tremendous opportunity, and at any time we do payroll rebates, it shouldn't be misconstrued as a cost to taxpayers, because again, that payroll rebate is only awarded when, and this is for the members' benefit, is when targets, it's when targets are met, employment targets are met. So this is a significant opportunity for us, and if we are going to compete, we've got to compete. If we're, if that didn't happen, and if the general population knew that we were trying to persuade projects to come here. And if the general population knew about it at the time, and if we didn't get them here, I'm wondering what the criticism would have been. Well, Minister, you squandered an opportunity to get 440 new jobs in the province of Nova Scotia. Why didn't you give them something? Payroll rebates, we are not giving them something. Payroll rebates are an incentive for the company to locate here in Halifax.
The honourable member for Glace Bay with 6 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to offer some caution to the minister. He's getting very comfortable with the word target, so he's used it a couple times. So I think he's going to use it in the future, I hope. Maybe that's the one contribution I made to him. But just one more question with respect to that to the minister. Again, the points aren't lost on me about the value of certainly of payroll rebates and how they're used and how the value is implied for the taxpayer. When you have, in this case, $11 million to put forth for an endeavor, an investment, I think there would be a lot of endless list of private sector companies that would line up to say, here's what we can do, here's what we're prepared to do in Nova Scotia. And again, the focus and the fundamental problem, again, that I have with the project's investment with respect to tax dollars is that the sector didn't seem to be one that needed involvement by government. And one example we've talked about at great length here with ERDT budget estimates, and that's the forestry sector. Rightly or wrongly, the minister, the government, his department decided that forestry last year, with Bowater, with Stern, with Northern Pulp, they needed some help, and the rationale was that we're turning the corner on forestry, and we're going to make these improvements, these enhancements to get the respective organizations to the next level. Well, that to me was how you evaluated that sector. So forestry and pulp and paper could be viable, so we're going to support it and get it to the next level. That's kind of the question I'm asking with respect to the industrial sector here. So, an example similar to consulting engineering would be, say, financial services. If you were to put an $11 million offer on the table for any of the commercial banks or the community banks, the co-ops, I think they would be only too happy to put together a proposal for, well, this is what it would look like, this is what we could do, and this is what we could relocate to Halifax. So again, my question is, how did we identify the consulting engineering sector as the one to invest in when that seems to be healthy in Nova Scotia versus those who could use some assistance?
The Honourable Minister for Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you to the member from Cape Breton, from Glace Bay. I feel we are getting very close. I sincerely do. And I'm just going to spend just a couple minutes, and maybe the remaining gap, which might have started over here, but I think it's somewhere around here. Maybe I can close that. And I think, and I want to be clear, that this is, when I hear the number $11 million, it almost sounds like that's a reference that we're actually taking $11 million and saying, here, project, here's $11 million, and that line item becomes a cost to Nova Scotia taxpayers. That's not the case, because what happens is, whether it be projects, whether it be IBM, whether it be RIM/BlackBerry, or any one of those companies that we provide payroll rebates to, it's saying, you come to Nova Scotia, you're going to get a payroll rebate if you create, and I'll use the job creation, if you create X number of jobs for the employees, or for Nova Scotians. Company X comes, first year, second year, they reach the milestones, the targets that have been identified, and they receive money for that, but the money that they receive is a result of the taxes that we've gained from that company. Those are taxes that we would never have had if the company wasn't here, plus the incentive in every instance never exceeds what we get in tax. Another good example, if you take projects at 440 jobs, you add IBM to that mix at 500 jobs, there's almost 1,000. Then you put BlackBerry in there, there's a total of those three companies alone, there's a total of 400 employees for employment here in Nova Scotia. Together, we will make $22 million after we pay out the rebate. So that's $22 million that we, the province of Nova Scotia, would not have had if those companies were not here or did not stay here. That's $23 million now that we didn't have yesterday, now that the Minister of Transportation has some extra money now to invest in roads. The Minister of Education now has extra money to invest in schools. The Minister of Health now has some extra tax-paying money to invest in health. So these are strategic investments that we make for the long term. And when it comes to prospecting, what NSBI does, and I know the president of NSBI, who has joined us here on the floor, will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know I'm not wrong. No. But what they do is they prospect. And I mentioned yesterday that NSBI are prospectors. They're out there prospecting every day on behalf of Nova Scotians. And what they're prospecting for are those companies that have the most likelihood of relocating somewheres, and it's their job to go and talk to those companies to persuade them to come here. But they have to do their due analysis off the company, off the jobs. And one of the ways that they have of doing that is through payroll rebates. I mentioned already how competitive it is in the global community. Projects could, IBM could be anywheres in the world, anywheres. And we should be so, and I know we are, we're so proud that they have chosen Nova Scotia. The way that we compete is we compete as a result of payroll rebates, and we compete because of our educational system here in Nova Scotia, because of our university and our college. We've got we're the university/college capital of Canada. The world knows that. And one of the main resources that we have that we can boast about and helps us draw companies are our human resources, the people. Nova Scotians are good workers. They are dedicated. They are loyal. And you treat a that's why Nova Scotians are so popular in Alberta, is because they're good workers. They go out there, and when you hire a Nova Scotian for an 8-day work session, you get 10 hours out of a Nova Scotian. So we've got that reputation. So those are all the reasons, but certainly those are the drawing cards. But when you're down at the negotiating table, it's the payroll rebate that's going to seal the deal. And so it's not a cost to Nova Scotians. We make money. We are making money. That gives us more money so that we can invest, not only in all those things that government does, but so that we can invest in other companies that are already currently here in Nova Scotia. The old saying around ERDT is that if we don't compete for these jobs, and if we're not getting these jobs, then Nova Scotia's economy is going in the tank. So,
the time allotted for the official opposition has expired. We now recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton North.
Do you want a break before we start?
Keep going.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. These were on the topic of payroll rebates. I'm going to ask a few short questions, if that's okay. With respect to RIM, in 2005, there was a $19 million payroll given to RIM to create 1,200 jobs. As of 2011, there was only 540 jobs, and I assume they got the rebate on the 540 jobs. In 2012, the government has given RIM another $10 million to keep or create 400 jobs. I'm just wondering if you explain to me how that payroll rebate will work on those 400 jobs after they got the rebate on them already.
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, I do thank the member from Cape Breton North for that question. I know that when we make announcements, whether it be with RIM or with any company, sometimes the real message gets lost, and to the general population, the public is not aware of some of the details and some of the circumstances around investments. For RIM, is that RIM's been in how many years? 2005. RIM came here in 2005, and they did come here on a payroll rebate through the efforts of NSBI. I think anyone that reads a newspaper, listens to the radio, or watches television will recall how RIM ran into some difficult times. They ran into some difficult times in the last couple years. And RIM came here originally and it was a competition. Nova Scotia beat out 30 other jurisdictions that also wanted RIM to be located there. But RIM ran into some difficulties, and I think that was actually it was headline news for many weeks in a row, how their stocks went down. And in the meantime, what BlackBerry had decided to do is they were going through a reorg. They were reorganizing their company. They have facilities, as I think most people know. They've got a head facility in Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, and here in Nova Scotia. They also have a facility in Texas. They're in London. Part of the reorg to make a long story very, very short, is what they had decided to do is they were going to close some of their locations. They were going to close and consolidate, and I don't want to use the word downsize, but they were going to streamline their services. That meant that some places had to close. Now, if we had not provided a payroll rebate and done business with BlackBerry, the chances of us talking about BlackBerry in the light that we are talking about it this morning probably would not exist. We may be talking about BlackBerry, but I would venture to say that you would be criticizing me for not having done enough to keep the company here. The incentive, and I want to say the incentive that BlackBerry gets from the province, and one of the things that I've said here consistently is that our investment in BlackBerry does not exceed our profit margins. We still will make, as taxpayers of Nova Scotia, we still make money on. There's still roughly 400 jobs here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Did we want to lose those 400 jobs? Well, we were going to do whatever it took that was reasonable and in the best interest of taxpayers to make sure that BlackBerry stayed in Halifax. And I don't know if I've ever said this, but we should be grateful, thankful to NSBI for being able to conduct business with BlackBerry and see that they stayed here, hopefully for years yet to come. So the BlackBerry deal is a good deal. We make money, and again, and I know the member has heard me say this, this gives us, Nova Scotians, more money so that we can reinvest in other businesses, so that we can reinvest in our own education, so that we can reinvest in our health care. So it really is a good news story, like all the strategic investments that we made over the last number of years.
The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
And I'm far from having a business background, but just to me that seems like it's a double rebate for the same job that is already created. I guess my question around that is, how long is this deal with RIM or BlackBerry for, and what's going to happen at the end of the deal if they decide they want to pack up and go again? Do we negotiate another deal with them, or could we use that money more wisely?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Try to get my head around that question so I can hopefully give an appropriate, not response, but answer. The first thing that comes to my mind, and I say this with all due respect to everybody, not only in the House, but everybody that's outside of these hollow walls. We have companies in Nova Scotia, and the reality is, whether we like it or whether we don't, those companies, some of those companies, well, any of those companies, they could pack up anytime. They could just make a decision, well, we're leaving Nova Scotia, and they could go. The deal that we've got with BlackBerry is still, we make money on it. And the question being, at the end of, it's a 5-year deal. If at the end of the 5 years, if BlackBerry came to us, came to NSBI and said, well, we're pulling stakes. Well, if I was still minister 5 years hence, my hope would be, or even if I'm not the minister, if I'm still alive and still living in Nova Scotia, which if the good Lord's willing, that will be the case, my hope would be that the Nova Scotia government of the day with NSBI would go and say and negotiate and do what it has to do to ensure that that company and those 400 jobs were around for another 5 years or another 10 years or another 20 years. Because those negotiations, if it lives true to form 5 years hence, we wouldn't lose any money. This is about 400 average of 400 jobs, good paying jobs, not leaving the province of Nova Scotia, but staying here and contributing to our tax base. I'd rather be paying out some of the money as a result of that, not all of it, so that we, the taxpayers of Nova Scotia, would be still making a profit on the fact that those 400 BlackBerry jobs are still in the province of Nova Scotia. So the answer to the question is, it would be my hope. It would be my hope and my desire as a taxpayer of Nova Scotia that the government 5 years hence will do whatever it can that's reasonable and prudent to keep that company in the province of Nova Scotia.
The honourable member for Cape Breton North.
And I'll go back to where I left off in the last round of questioning. When we started talking job targets, that came to my mind, so I had to get that clarified and get my head around it as well. So when I was speaking last time, I was asking about the new jobs that are created, and there was had a target of $45,000 a year per job created under NSBI. Only the actual result was $38,000. Can you tell me why this target wasn't met?
The Honourable the Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Welcome to the chair.
Thank you.
First of all, we don't have those numbers right at our fingertips. And the reason I say that, oh, maybe we do.
Right there.
Okay.
That's the one, 2012-13 for by investment traction clients.
Yeah, some of the numbers that that the member has quoted aren't in line with the numbers that we have. And one of the things that I'm looking at is in 2012-13, average gross salaries of new jobs forecast is at 55,000. So we've got a number here of 55 under outcomes and performance measures. We've got 55,000. I think what I heard coming from the member was a heck of a lot lower than that. So what I will also do is, as I look up at staff, is we'll even provide you with something in print with respect to the 55,000, and we'll go from there.
The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton North.
And you're from Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. Huh?
And so is the member from Glace Bay.
The numbers I'm quoting from are from NSBI's 2012-13 annual report under the corporate scorecard summary. So anyway, we'll move on from that. On that same paper, on that same report, only one domestic investment deal was done, and there was a target of 4. Can you explain to me why there'd be such a low result if the target was 4?
The Honourable the Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, with NSBI, they are very focused on external opportunities. I think I'm not clear on what the member from Cape Breton North is referring to, and it's on its way over here. And one of the things that in the area of for time is I could also make a suggestion, but we will look at this when the member gets up again, and maybe we get an opportunity to.
This one here?
Well, that's 4.
Yeah, because it's not our focus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. The corporate scorecard, and certainly, as I was starting to say when I first rose, we are focused. NSBI focused externally. Domestic focus is not their forte. It's about attracting those companies from outside that are external to Nova Scotia. So when you see the number 4 under investment clients, and you're looking at domestic investment, that they're certainly not one of their focuses. And if there's still some area of confusion around the corporate scorecard summary, what I can do, and I only make this offer to save the members some time, we can certainly have NSBI and the members sit down and maybe explain the external attraction versus the domestic investment.
The Honourable the member for Cape Breton North.
So if we're talking foreign investment or external investment, only 5 foreign direct investment deals were done with a target of 8. If that's the case, can you tell me what happened there?
The Honourable the Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, through you to the member, I would caution the member not to get too hung up on the corporate scorecard, because what in fact happens, and I trust the member will be able to appreciate this, and I look at the number 5, and I see I see 8 as the targeted number, and what happens in the area of business when you're sitting down negotiating for someone to come, that may not show up until a year, 2 years down the road. And we've already spent some time this morning talking about projects. Projects was years in the making. I know for a fact that when I met Admiral Insurance, the company from Bermuda that relocated, that opened up an office here in Halifax, that was 5 years in the making. So that means that Admiral Insurance would have showed up in the numbers 5 years previously and every year since then, but it wouldn't have been realized until year 6. So I would just caution anyone that's going to put too much emphasis or too much hay in the numbers that are presented. What these are guidelines, they're estimates, they are actual individual companies that are being talked to, and again, and sometimes it takes years to do a deal.
The Honourable, the member for Cape Breton North.
We're back. I guess we're back on the targets that we're going to get odds at. Anyway, the Business Finance Division had a target to complete 14 projects, and only 5 of those projects completed. Is that result because of the same idea?
The Honourable, the Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's exactly right. These negotiations sometimes take a while. I know another good example would be, and I think this might bring it into an even greater light. I've been to the air show, and in the world of business, is that when you attend, it's important for us, Nova Scotia, to have a presence at these events, because what happens in the world of business, if you miss a year, it's almost like you're starting over again. So it's for these numbers. There's such a nurturing process to it for some of these companies, and if I'm to reiterate, it simply is not